Welcome back, everyone, to the Stay Introverted Podcast. I am your co-host, Jay Coleman.
And I'm your I always every fucking time. Sorry, that was a new one. That was a record. How quickly I dropped an F-bomb. I'm your other co-host, Steph Laffey.
There we go.
We'll get it right. Maybe, I don't know, it's episode 13. Maybe by episode 50.
Yeah, no rush. It's a work in progress. But yes, we are your two co-hosts. And as always, thank you for tuning in and hanging out with us for a little while two introverts kind of just shoot the breeze, talking shit. But today we have a special guest. I would like to introduce our good friend, Julie Hagen. Again, we have no clapper, so I clap on my own.
We're going to get one eventually.
We're going to get one when we get money in the budget. We're getting a clapper.
And definitely before we figure out the intro, we'll have a clapper.
Probably. That's kind of how it's going to work. But yes, but I'll start off by having Julie start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. I am an introvert who often gets mislabeled as an extrovert. I am a psychedelic facilitator. I'm a coach. And I'm really excited to talk to you about all the things here today, including some of the awesome tools that I've used to help me on my introverted journey, and to share some tools with your audience that they can take and implement right away.
Amazing. We're so grateful that you're here. And we're so excited to get into some of the work that you do and how it can not only help introverts, but just like humans in general. So Julie, before we dive into like some of the tools, I'd love to have you share a little bit about like your introverted journey. Like, have you always been the type to get mistaken as an extrovert, or did this come later? Like, how did that all start?
So up until the age of 6, I would say I was probably more extroverted. And I actually got in a fight with a date one time who was a PhD candidate in psychology. And he was telling me how personality isn't fixed. It's really dynamic and it can shift. And I don't know where I got off, but I was telling him like, no, you are who you are, blah, blah, blah. This guy was getting, again, a PhD. So I obviously had a lot of audacity in having this argument with him. But the longer I've been in my line of work, I've seen how much people can change and evolve. And up until the time I was 6, I was really loud and bubbly and probably more extroverted, but my dad died. I was really withdrawn. I didn't know how to relate to peers. I didn't feel like a child. And so for the longest time, I was kind of what people stereotypically think of as an introvert, quiet and, again, withdrawn. And then I started to kind of find my voice and break out of that shell and start my healing journey from that loss. And as time went on, I became more of that bubbly self again. However, I always knew I had a cap. I could only do it for so long. I really love my alone time. I've always known that's where I am able to recharge and come home to myself. And I like to say I'm right at the cusp of introverted and extroverted, but I do need to at some point disengage, pull the plug, go home to my cats, sit on my couch. And there gets to be a point where I can physically feel it. I'm exhausted. I don't even want to talk to anyone on the phone. I don't want to text someone back. I just want to be alone. So it's been a journey for me, but I'd say I've been misidentified as an extrovert, at least for the last 10 years. And maybe I always will be, because my line of work is it's having conversations and interacting with other people. And I love it. And it does fulfill me. But I've always loved curling up with a book and being by myself more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yes, that's definitely awesome. And, to your point, one of the things that I've really learned, not just about myself, but about introversion in general, and I think you may even feel this way as well, is that introversion exists more on a spectrum as opposed to it just being this or that. There is no one way to be an introvert. We come in many, as I say, many different flavors. Some of us really are withdrawn and reserved and quiet. Some of us are more bubbly and can be more outgoing than your typical introvert. But again, there's no one way to be introverted. Just like I assume there's no one way to be extrovert, although to me they're all out, so it is just the same thing. But I digress. There's no
Shots fired. All right.
Yes, that's how we do. It's been a while since I fired a shot off as an extrovert, so I have to get it in. Gotta keep that average up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think anything is black or white, right? Everything exists on a spectrum, and that's also why it's so important that, in my view, we're not out there labeling other people, right? Because everyone has their own internal experience. Like, I know for myself, it's easy to look at me and think I'm an extrovert, but I really fall more on that scale of needing to charge back up by myself.
Absolutely. And I think that, like, you said something else that was interesting earlier, how you kind of started out extroverted and then you withdrew and kind of went inward and came back out as a more sort of in-between kind of person. So I think that's really interesting, that the idea that in different seasons of your life, in different eras of your life, you can present more as one or more the other. And then it also probably depends on kind of what you're doing with your life, what's going on outside of you. So I know that, like we've talked offline, and I know that you were a lawyer at a point, and now you're kind of more in the online space. So do you think that your introversion has taken a step back a little bit since you stepped out of that lawyer corporate role, or?
That is such a good question. I think for me, it's really about how comfortable I feel in a situation. So that I feel very comfortable online. Like, if I get on stories or I go live, like, I can talk to the camera and act like I'm just having a conversation with someone. It just feels very natural to me. But if I were to go to a party and I don't know anyone or only know one person, I'm definitely going to like clam up a bit and be scared. So, if I were back when I was a lawyer, if I had to go to court and I didn't know anyone else in the courtroom, and maybe if it was even a new kind of case that I was working on, then yes, I'm going to feel extremely like introverted and really hyper aware of everyone around me and worried. But if like I see my old friend and like I know the judge and blah, 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 then I'm more at ease. So for me, it's more like specific situations versus like broad periods of my life.
I love that. That's really interesting. And Jay, I mean, you've had a number of roles in your experience, like outside of the podcasting and online space. Have you found yourself more introverted in some than others?
Most definitely. And you and I we talk offline about this, where in one of my previous jobs, I guess I was so effective at being personable and kind of outgoing that my former coworkers didn't believe me when I told them that I was actually introverted. They actually started arguing with me, like, "You're not introverted," and I had to explain to them, that's. There's work Jay, and then there's actually real Jay. And work Jay is very happy-go-lucky, quick-witted joke, always eager to help out. But there's a clock on that, and once that clock runs out, real Jay is taking over and going home, and he'll see you in about 3 or 5 business months. So yeah, I've improved, because it used to be business years. So I'm getting better. But baby steps. But yeah, I definitely find myself more introverted in some cases, and even dare I say, more extroverted in others. But it comes and goes. I mean, it depends. I honestly would say it depends more on like the vibe and the people that happen to be around me than anything else. Um, it just takes the amount it takes however long it takes to get comfortable around somebody. It's not something that I can control. I don't know if other introverts may feel the same, but at least for me, that's kind of how it is. It just takes however long it takes to get used to somebody and get comfortable.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I know for me, like you guys are both kind of talking about different periods of your life. Like, right now, Jay, I'm not sure if you feel more introverted or extroverted, or like same with you, Jules. Like I know you feel a little bit more on the extroverted side. For me, it's like day to day. Sometimes it's like minute to minute, like extroverted, introverted. Actually, like I'm like up and down. So like if I am really tired, don't fucking talk to me. Don't bother me. Don't ask me questions because I only have so much energy, and there's only so much that I can take right now. But if I am well rested, I got a good workout, I'm not hungry, I'm interested in what I'm doing, you wouldn't even know that I'm an introvert.
Yeah, I think that's.
And you've probably both seen both sides of me.
Yeah, I think for me, like I pretty much always feel introverted just to some degree. I mean, in this online space, doing lives, making content, going back and forth with my customers and followers. It's definitely draining, or it can be, even though it can also be enjoyable. I enjoy helping my fellow introverts express themselves, or finding out that I'm saying something that they've thought of for months or years. So kind of being the voice, I guess, for certain introverts. So that's always a good feeling. But I think, at least for me, even though it can be daunting, even though it can be exhausting, I think it just kind of is what it is, and we just kind of do what we have to do to make it through. The alternative, I guess, is running away, but you kind of get to a point where that's not really a strategy. So I think introverts more so than others are really good at understanding what it is they have to do and kind of just working through it, to get to that other side, and then figuring out how to rest and recharge and reset.
Absolutely. So Jules, I know that you do a lot. Do I call you Jules normally? I feel like
I think you do.
Let's roll with it. So I know that you work with like a lot of different people in your line of work. Do you think that a lot of people that come to you are more on the extroverted or more on the introverted side, or is it kind of a mix of both?
Wow, you're really making me think here today, Steph. I have never thought about these questions before. Okay.
It's going to make sense. Like my line of
questions. I think this is great. Like I very rarely get asked a question I've literally never thought of. So this is actually, I like this a lot. Okay. Well, actually, first, I just wanted to affirm what Jay said, because I was just listening to a podcast about this, and this one was talking about how important networking is, but she's an introvert. And so he's like, exactly what Jay said. It's like, you have to have your goals and you have to know what you have to do in order to make the most of social interactions. So she said, like, when I go to networking events, even though I'm introverted, I have a goal of, I have a meaningful conversation with 3 people. Like we exchange information. Like her rule is she takes a selfie with people, and she knows like when she does her 3, then she can leave if she wants to. But we all have strengths and things we could build on. So for extroverted people, I think they have a hard time like listening and really diving in deep with someone, where an introvert might be more adept at that. So we all have things that are like superpowers and things that we could work on and we get to like put more effort into. But I think that's like an awesome observation about introverts and like knowing what you get to do in order to make the thing happen. Because you can't just run away from your life. But okay, so my clients, I would actually say now that I'm sitting here really like thinking back on them, are more introverted.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting because I know that a lot of the work with psychedelics and just, you know, executive coaching, which I know you used to do, it's a lot of getting in tune with yourself and like getting to know yourself and getting to know how you adapt in the world. And so my question to you was, do you think that in the work that you do, leading your clients to get to know themselves and like really fall in love with themselves, do you think it helps them to embrace their introversion a little bit more rather than thinking like, oh, there's something wrong with me, like why am I so weird, why are people so scary, like I mean, I know for me, like learning about myself made me stop thinking I was a freak. Like I'm still a little weird and out there, but like I like it.
Okay, this is another like such a good question. So I think you probably heard me like on my page talk about this before, Steph, like in my stories, but I really encourage people to embrace this idea of neutrality about themselves. Like there's nothing wrong with how you are, or what you do, or what you've done. It's just, it is what it is. And like the more we can embrace ourselves, like first from a place of neutrality, of like removing any sort of charge or shame or guilt or making ourselves wrong, and then move into a space of loving. It's like you are who you are. There is no other version of you. Like not like you're like a little snowflake or whatever, but truly there is no other version of you that will ever exist, especially in this time. And like I said before, like everyone has things that are absolutely like superpowers about themselves, and everyone has things that, you know, could be less advantageous in certain circumstances. But moving away from this idea that some things are good and some things are bad, or some things are right and some things are wrong, and just embracing ourselves for who we are, I think that's where the magic really is. Like that's where the juice is, if you want to like look at it that way. Like the juice is worth the squeeze. But I think it's so powerful to just be like, I am who I am. And so yeah, I do think a big part of supporting the introverts I work with is helping them just like love and accept all parts of themselves without needing it to be different.
I love that. Wow. And I feel like, Jay, you can probably attest to this, but when our very first episode, or maybe it was the second one, who cares? Who knows, okay. We polled our audience and we asked them, like, what did being an introvert mean to you? And a lot of the responses were like negative, like self-deprecating almost. And it was like, I forget where I was going with this. But there goes my ADD. So a lot of the responses were like very self-deprecating, very like negative, and it just makes me think, you know, I would love to challenge anybody that's listening right now that has ever put themselves down about their introversion and made it a negative thing. Like, how can you neutralize it? How can you make it? I think if you start by neutralizing, eventually you can start to see the positive. But if you start, but it's just a lot easier to go from negative to neutral than it is to negative to positive. So how can you make it neutral? How can you just kind of let it be what it is? I don't know if either of you want to expand that.
Well, you're absolutely right. We did definitely get more than a handful of like just negative, in my opinion, because stereotypical traits and attributes that people think introverts have. So it's not easy. You know, I think you really have to be proactive in really changing your mindset about what introverts are, what you are as an introvert. That's not easy because looking inward is never easy. Trying to find the neutral part is a big step, let alone trying to find something positive, particularly when you're just that far into negative territory. So I don't know. I don't know how we really get there. For me, I guess I had never looked at it as far, from a standpoint of trying to get to a neutral place. I just automatically went to trying to find positive to it. Mm-hmm. But either way, it really took being proactive, and it took time and energy to actually do it. It's very much intentional. Like, it's not something that you can kind of back into or fall into. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is you kind of have to want to get out of that negative space. Hopefully people will hear this and this episode and decide to make that change and take that step. We'll see.
It makes a big difference. I mean, as an introvert, we only have X amount of energy and interest, you can definitely shift that, but that's a later conversation. As the average introvert, you have X amount of energy and X amount of time in your day, and being negative about it is probably not going to help you maximize that energy and maximize that time. So if you could at least neutralize it, you'll stop going maybe you'll stop going in those shame spirals and those how did I run out of time, or what's wrong with me? I think, Jules, we talked about this offline earlier today, actually, about how shame and guilt and all that stuff, it really, what did you call it? Can you help me out here? It's they're low vibes or whatever. They kind of pull you down.
So if you were going to look at the vibrational resonance of emotions, so what frequency an emotion gives off, if you're going to look at ones like shame and guilt, they're actually below 0. So I think it goes down to -500. But again, someone might want to fact check me on that. But when you're in a really negative space, so I mean literally negative, right on the scale, not good or bad negative. But if you're in a negative place, it becomes paralyzing. It becomes you're stuck in a tomb and you can't get out. You can't take action. So that's why shame spirals can become so monumental in a hurtful way, because it builds and it builds and it builds like a snowball of destruction, of an inability to take a new action, to have a new thought. But if you're at neutrality, that's 0, right? The resonance of neutrality is 0. And it's a lot easier to move when you're unencumbered. And then all the way at the top, right? At positive 500, you have bliss and joy and, unconditional love and all of those good things. So it's true that it literally becomes difficult to change anything if you're stuck in feelings of shame and guilt. I just wanted to point out such a positive, though, that introverts have, that extroverts have to work extra hard for, because I heard you say introverts only have so much time and energy in their day to go out and to do the social thing, which is true. But you know how we were texting about deep work and shallow work, and shallow work are those things like responding to emails and administrative tasks. So this isn't shallow you're vapid. It's shallow it's a task that you can either outsource, automate, blah blah blah. Deep work are those things that only you and your zone of genius can do, and they really do require time of isolation spent in deep thought. Maybe it's researching, or maybe you work with your hands and you're a carpenter and you can build beautiful things. So these are things that only you can uniquely do. And so because introverts aren't going to spend as much time out and about, and they're going to spend more time with themselves, they're more primed to put effort into that deep work that's going to produce, that's where we get our Picassos and, our Hemingways and these amazing producers of art and craft and things that people remember for millennia forward. Those are deep workers. And I would guess that those people are probably introverts too, because it's hard to do that level of work if you're like trying to text 17 people and having conversations with 12 of them at the bar and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I definitely like that phrase, zone of genius. I'm definitely going to use that.
Oh, I think that's on our list. So yes.
Yeah, zone of genius. I love it. So I do have a question. So what would you, I guess, recommend as a first step for someone who's trying to get out of that negative space, and towards neutrality? Like, what will be a good, just kind of first step?
Okay, yeah. Would one of you mind sharing like an old thought that you would tell yourselves about yourself because you were introverted? Like, I'm bad because I'm introverted, or like I'm never going to be able to do blah 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 because I'm introverted. Just like a repeating thought that you used to have.
I used to think that I was not enough.
Okay.
And that I was awkward.
I'm not enough. I'm awkward. Okay. So coming back to this idea of neutrality, everything that we're thinking is just a story. It's just a narrative. I really believe the only thing that you can empirically like prove that's fact are things like math, right? We can do the proofs, we can do the calculus, and we can see that, yes, this is always true 100% of the time. But even if we were to dig into like, I'm not enough, Steph, we'd have to look at like enough of what, or enough compared to who. And every different person would have a different answer. And we'd realize like, this is all a completely subjective experience. Everyone's perception of reality is so different depending on whatever lenses that you have accumulated through your life. Because in every experience, we're adding a new lens, a new lens, a new lens. So when you can just realize, hey, I'm telling myself this story, it's not inherently true. It's a narrative that I have running in my mind. Then you start to realize, okay, if it's just a story, I can begin telling myself a different one. And that doesn't mean your different story is going to feel natural or good or safe or even like a heck yes at the beginning. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you can start to realize that that thought is not true in the truest sense of that word, right? Very few things are true. We don't know a lot of things to be facts. And I think that's just really empowering. Like the first time I realized I was just telling myself a story about literally everything, my mind kind of exploded. And I was like, wow, like anything could be my new story.
That's wild.
Awesome.
And so I know that like one of the tools that you use to kind of really unpack some of these stories, because some of these stories that we have, first of all, go back years and years and years and years, and they come from even like generations prior to ours that were passed on to us by our parents. But some of these stories you can't just unpack in a 2-minute conversation. Like I could say I'm so awkward, and you guys could help show me that, like prove to me that I'm not, right? That's simple. But if I want to really unpack that story, where does it come from? How does it make me feel? You and I have talked a ton about stream of consciousness journaling, and I've used that tool. I have not shut up about that tool. I love it. Can you tell us a little bit about like utilizing that in this kind of sense? Like
Yeah.
What is it, first of all?
So stream of consciousness journaling would just be like getting out a sheet of paper, getting out a pen, and then writing. And when I say writing, I mean, I'm not thinking about my spelling. I'm not even necessarily ending sentences. So your, third grade teacher is probably going to be pissed if she looks at it, because it's just going to be run-on sentences and new thoughts and ideas, and they're not going to be perfectly formed, and they're not going to be poetic or, Pulitzer Prize worthy, but it's simply letting all of these thoughts that are always present in our heads, like a release valve, basically, for all of those things, because what we just keep inside of us in the darkness can grow like mold and it can expand and become a cancer. But the second you put it out on a piece of paper, the second it comes to the light, its power lessens, it diminishes, it takes up less space in your body and your mind. And you're going to start to see like, you know, you let yourself write. Some people set a timer. Some people just want to write a full page. Some people just naturally know when they're complete with the exercise. But you go back and you look and you start to like circle things or see themes. And it's like, wow, I had no idea I was carrying this thought or feeling or memory in me. And from there, you can finally start to work on things and digest them and like move on. But until it comes out, it's just going to grow inside of you.
So is stream of consciousness journaling, is that anything like free writing? Would that be the same
yeah
thing?
So I really say like stream of consciousness because I really don't want people to like try and make it pretty. So I think sometimes like, you know, free writing, we think about that like in elementary, well, this is my connotation. Like your fifth grade teacher says, okay, free write about whatever topic you want. But even then I'm still kind of, you know, okay, is there a subject and a predicate? And like, could I use a different word? Like when I say stream of consciousness, I really want you to like let it rip. Like, no, who cares about what tense the word is in? Maybe it doesn't even make sense to anyone but you. Like that's it. That's all that matters is you in this exercise. Is just really letting yourself go.
Right. And you're not, I find that when I go into it with like, I want to unpack this, it's like, I always end up in a completely different place. And I'm like, how did I get here? But if I just go in and just start writing, because I feel a need to purge onto the paper, whatever comes out is exactly what needed to come out in that moment. And at the end, like you're able to unpack, I find, a lot faster than if you were to like free write and like have a subject or a topic or like a specific prompt.
Yeah. And I think there's kind of two different realms of people. So some people, first of all, you know, I've said this one a lot. You're always getting exactly what you need. So it doesn't matter if you're going in with a specific goal or not. Like whatever comes up for you is what's meant for you in that moment. Some people really feel empowered by stream of consciousness and they can just go. Some people, especially if you're new to the practice, it's kind of overwhelming to think like, where do I?
Right.
Yeah. So one prompt I like to just like get people rolling is sort of like, what's been weighing on me? And then just see what happens.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I've worked with people because I did a workshop about stream of consciousness journaling, and I remember seeing a couple of people that were there. They were all kind of just like stuck, and I remember asking them like a simple like, what's on your mind today, or what's bothering you, or what did you think about this morning? And once they got started, it was like zipping across the pages. But it can be hard to like to get that first couple words out of you.
Yeah, especially if you've never journaled before. Your idea of journaling is like, dear diary, today Nick sat next to me at lunch.
Yeah, that definitely used to be my idea, which is why I wasn't a fan of journaling. Trying to get more into it, so hopefully I'll be where you two are someday.
Well, actually, I'm curious, Jay. Like, do you have, like, do you think, like, do you feel like you're a painter, or what's your favorite way to express yourself?
Cursing.
That's cool. You could do stream of consciousness cursing.
Oh, maybe don't do it in a public place or at work, but we're here for you if that's what happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could drop like, you know, your theme could be F-bomb. So it could be F-bomb, and then you could just like let it rip, like whatever the thing is, right? Like you might see that you're holding on to like some anger or something towards something you had no idea about.
Maybe. I mean, if nothing else, I'll be able to conjugate the F word so many times.
I believe in you.
Yes, I think my record is 25 different ways to say it, but
wow.
Hey, I'm overachiever. But yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I am trying to get more into journaling, just to get my thoughts out of my head, kind of how both of you said. It is definitely freeing, and it literally takes a weight off your shoulder, off shoulders, off your head, to kind of just get those things out onto the paper or onto a board. I guess with me, I'm not a fan of actually writing, so that's where my hang up is. So I gotta just I don't know, get a recorder and just start talking into the void or into the machine. Maybe that's a way to do it. But I'm definitely trying to journal in some way, shape, or fashion more this year.
No, you nailed it. It doesn't have to be like pen to paper. You can do a voice note in your phone. I've had people paint. I've had people like make dances up to express themselves. Like it really isn't about the pen and the paper. It's simply about taking whatever is in here and like bringing it out here somehow.
Yeah. Right. I definitely enjoy a good paint night. I will say that, yes. Painting is fun.
Yeah, maybe it's painting then.
Yeah. I sometimes, like, for me, it depends on the mood. Like, I have a journal in my Google Docs, and it's every quarter I start a new one, because eventually they get to, like, 300 pages, and I have to, like, it gets too frozen to continue. But, like, there are days where I write one sentence, because that's all that needed to come out. And there are days where I write 10 pages because I had a lot to get out of my brain. It's like I almost think of stream of consciousness journaling as like, you guys ever watch Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 5th movie, I think. I'm a little bit of a Harry Potter nerd. Dumbledore's like pulling thoughts out of his brain and like dropping them into a cauldron or something. Like he was pulling memories out. And, like, to me, like, that's, like, how I visually picture it. I'm, like, pulling the thoughts out of my brain and, like, popping them onto something that I can visually see. And then I'll go back and read them sometimes. And sometimes what comes out is absolutely batshit crazy. I'm, like, not judging myself, but okay. And sometimes it's, like, damn, like, that's an idea. Like, okay. You never know what's going to come out. And there's some days where I don't even journal at all. So,
yeah, I love that. I think anecdotal journaling is also really powerful, right? Of just like writing a few sentences, like whatever comes to mind at the end of your day, right? Maybe it's like, oh gosh, I kind of still have a bad taste in my mouth about that conversation I had with so-and-so. And just like acknowledging that is really powerful, even if you don't go full stream of consciousness and like really digest it all, just sort of letting things go. I like what you said about pulling it out. It's like you're releasing some weight every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there are times I'll be at work and like somebody will piss me off and I'm like, I can't think of anything but this stupid thing. It's like, it's just nagging at me. So I'll like go off in a conference room and I'll just rant into my my Voxer app or in a text to myself, like a voice note, get it out of my head without even thinking about it. Like my brain is like not even attached to my mouth. And it's whatever comes out, and then I move on with my day.
I love that for you.
Yes.
I'm always so worried that like somehow like the doors open a crack and the whole office can hear me. Because I'm not conscious of it because of my hearing. But like so far it hasn't happened yet.
Or not that anyone has said to you at least.
Yeah. But that's really helpful, and I think that for introverts in particular, having some kind of way to express ourselves can be really powerful. Because Jay, I don't know about you, and Jules, I don't know about you, but like before I had a way to express myself, I internalized everything, and like I took the weight of the world on like in my body, and like no wonder I was walking around so tense and so feeling like everybody thought I was awkward because I was so like wound so tight. So
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Before we kind of started this podcast, I was in the same boat. Just had no real outlet for all these thoughts. So it's definitely good to have that. I think I will take take a dabble in stream of consciousness journaling. Um, and see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, before I got into what I do now, I started with my first like coach, and this was years and years ago, but I didn't realize like between the age of 6 when my dad died and I'll say like 27, 28, I experienced really intense dissociation. And like once I realized like what that was and what was happening, my mind was kind of blown. Like it was to this day one of the weirdest things I've ever personally experienced within myself. And it was like it's very intense if you've ever experienced it. So I'm just sending anyone who ever has felt that way a lot of love.
Wow. Yeah. And did journaling help you kind of unpack that, or was that like how did you get through that?
Yeah, so I guess before I really even got into journaling, it was just having the space to talk to someone, because it's so funny, like you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't have a word for something, you don't know that it's happening. So like looking back, I can see now that I was really depressed in college, but I thought depression meant suicidal. Like I had those two things like in my mind connected, and because I did not feel that way, I thought I wasn't depressed, but I was also having panic attacks, but I didn't know what a panic attack was. So I was just really overwhelmed by my experience. So when I finally had the opportunity to speak to someone and express how I was feeling, and I'm telling her about like how I feel like I'm in my body, but I'm not controlling my body, and I can see what's happening, but it's almost like I'm a little person inside this like body. And I'm telling her about these experiences I'm having. She's like, you're dissociating. Like you're like almost going into a fugue state. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what is that? So just having like, that was, I think the first thing was just being able to talk to someone and just share honestly how I was feeling. And once I opened the floodgates there, then yeah, journaling became huge for me. And I've like filled up so many journals since then, but I think I just needed the permission to be heard and to speak first.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes having that word, like, oh, that's what this is. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So what was I gonna ask? So for those who kind of switching gears a little bit, somebody asked me a question about stream of consciousness journaling, and they asked, what is the difference between that and brainstorming? And like, I think I have an idea, but I want to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so brainstorming in particular is like trying to find a solution to some sort of problem, right? Like I'm coming up with ideas. I think we hear about a brain clear a lot, and I think brain clears are very close to stream of consciousness journaling. But in my mind, a brain clear is usually about a particular thing. Like I need to brain dump about work, or again, it's like about a specific problem.
Right.
But if you're really in like stream of consciousness, and again, I gave the prompt of using, what's been weighing on me, because some people have a really hard time, like we've seen, of just getting the ball rolling with the writing. But true stream of consciousness is just, I have no expectation. I have no idea what's going to come out. I'm just going to write here and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. So brain clear, and then brainstorm is more going in with like a very specific like intention. Like I'm gonna brainstorm ideas for what I want to do for my 30th birthday. I'm not just gonna like brainstorm and see what comes out.
Yeah, it's like, problem, solution.
Right. Okay.
And I've always kind of looked at brainstorming as more of a collaborative activity also. Not always, but that's kind of how I typically look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's kind of like, okay, everyone, go back to your desk and brainstorm, and then we'll come back as a class and we'll see what ideas we come up with, right? So yeah, I definitely, that resonates too, of like, it's a group activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious, like, do you think anybody can benefit from stream of consciousness journaling, or do you need to be in a certain like headspace, or like, 'cause it could be a lot, and it could be very emotionally triggering if a lot comes up. So if somebody is feeling super anxious, is that the best approach, or?
Yeah, so I do truly think anyone can benefit from it. I don't know that I think it's always like the most supportive thing to do in a given moment, right? So like the person you're describing, like maybe she's feeling really anxious. Is it the best thing for her to do in that moment? Maybe not. Like maybe actually she really needs to do something that's gonna like somatically soothe her so that she can get to a place to write, because if someone's really anxious, they're probably in one of the 4 nervous system, like fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And so like if you're in fight or you're in freeze, like freeze is like it sounds, right? You literally can't, like nothing's going to come out. So I wouldn't say that that's probably like the most supportive choice I would make in that moment. But I truly believe every single person, if they're in a more neutral state where their nervous system isn't hyperactivated, would benefit from this practice.
Okay. Interesting. So, like, how would you know if somebody had no tools? Sorry. Pause here. So if somebody had had never tried any kind of journaling, would you say that stream of consciousness? I'm kind of jumping all over the place because I keep getting asked all these questions, and I want to make sure that I'm covering all of them. But if somebody had never journaled before or has never really had success with doing it, maybe they've tried out the Pinterest prompts and like just fell apart, or maybe their coach gave them a list of questions and it just didn't work. Do you think stream of consciousness is a good place to start, or maybe bullet journaling, or like where does it fall in line? Like for me, it was the first one that worked, so I went with it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so to your final point, I do think there is not one solution for every person. So it is so important to try. Like, I don't want someone to think, oh, I tried to journal once and it didn't work, so journaling isn't for me.
Yeah.
I would say that type of journaling probably isn't for you. And that's okay. Like, not, no one fits everything. To your earlier point of, sometimes people are really going through it and it can bring up more emotions and it can be hard to deal with. Like, I just want to acknowledge that that's true. Like, I know that it can feel really overwhelming, and that's why I sought out support in the first place, because I was like, I'm having all these big feelings and I don't know how to process them and manage them. And so I just want you to know, like, you're not alone in that feeling. If you're listening to this and you think, oh my God, that's me. And, there are so many wonderful like service providers out there that I'm sure that you can find your magic person who's going to support you, like, and make you feel so seen and heard. So I never want anyone to give up on that journey. If you're like, I do feel like I want support. I would really, if you feel like you've done the journaling thing and it didn't work for you, the first thing I would look at is like, what didn't work for you? Was it because like you felt like you didn't have enough to say? Was it because you felt like you had to do it for so long and you didn't want to? So once you can identify why you thought it didn't work, I think you can reverse engineer a solution. So maybe it is like setting a timer so you only like, you hold your pen for 5 minutes, and if nothing comes out, that's okay. Or maybe your goal is like, I'm just going to write for 1 page, bullet journaling, because anything else feels more overwhelming. Or, maybe if you're someone who literally is like, I don't like these prompts, then yeah, stream of consciousness is probably really good for you because it's prompt free. It's just whatever comes out. But I think identify why you think you don't like journaling or why journaling doesn't work for you, and then go from there to create a solution and try out a different kind of journaling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Okay.
No, definitely, it definitely makes sense. I guess as Steph plays with Meatball, who, as we all know, is a friend of the show.
I'm good. My husband's not a fan of listening when I'm podcasting. Sean. Sorry.
Sean is our other friend of the show.
He is our unseen friend, unseen and unheard. But that was really helpful, and I think that was like a really good guidance for people to think about. It gets to be whatever you need. And if it didn't work for you before, that's okay. Just try something else if you still feel like you need the support. It's journaling, I feel like, isn't going to work if you're doing it for somebody else or because somebody told you should. Like, it works if it's what you need.
That was a really hard lesson for me to learn, like on my own journey I felt like I had to do certain steps because other people were doing them. And if I didn't like do them, then I was doing it wrong. And now I'm just at a place where like, I know what works for me. I know what I like. And I don't think I have to follow anyone else's formula step by step in order for me to feel good. And that was really empowering too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember being like in the first coaching program that I was ever in, like years and years ago. They were like, fill in these journal prompts. And at the time, I was so fixated on like checking things off the list, as you know, something I'm working on. But I was like, I'm going to follow every single step of this program, and I'm going to answer every single question. And it was so rigid and so like trying to fit myself in a box that like I actually hated journaling for like a solid couple of years. I like wouldn't do it. Anytime I worked with a coach who like gave me journal prompts, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Not gonna do those. Because it was like I felt like I was forcing it. And then I kind of just stumbled on it by accident, kind of. And like I let it be whatever it had to be. And like by using this stream of consciousness style, now I'm obsessed with it again. So, I guess, I don't know what my point was there, but let it be what it's meant to be.
Yeah, and I'm so happy you found what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have, Jay, do you have any more questions? Because I have crazy and crazier chomping at the bits waiting for me to feed them or something.
No more questions, but before we wrap up, Julie, why don't you tell the listening public where they can find you?
Yeah, okay. If you want to come jam out with me on Instagram, I am so happy to have a conversation with you. My name on Instagram is Julie, and then it's Cyvonne, Julie Savone. That's my name, my first name and my middle name. So you can find me there, or you can send me an email at julie@juliesavone.com. If you're like, oh, wow, I really want to talk more about this, or, if maybe you realize you dissociate for the first time on this podcast, always happy to listen and, just see you in that experience, because it can be very validating. But I so appreciate you guys having me on and facilitating this awesome conversation, asking me some questions I truly have never thought about before. And yeah, I just so appreciate your time. And little meatball, who's just so angry. Also, I know Sean can't hear me, but in my mind, Sean is like a gangster because he has a New York accent. And so whenever I think about Sean, I think about him in like 1920s clothes, like running around with the mob.
Oh my God. You know what? I'll let you keep that picture for a little while longer.
Thank you.
And then eventually I may disappoint. But no, he's awesome. He's awesome. But the New York accent is definitely a staple.
I just like accents.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out
accent.
Who?
Jay.
I'm still trying to figure out what a New York accent is, because yes, I'm from New York as well, but people keep saying I don't have a New York accent, and I have no idea what that means.
You know what? When I send you at some point, I'll manage to get a clip of Sean talking, and you'll hear it, and you'll be like, "That's a New York accent." That is a New York accent.
I mean, this like I guess the stereotypical like Brooklyn accent, you know, like get the fuck out of here. But it's like who? There's like eight people who talk like that these days. I don't.
I like that. That's what I want. Like lasagna.
Yeah. Paisan. Like who talks like that? Like, no one does that.
That's what I want. I like that.
I really hope that I have a little kid who like thinks that that's their accent someday.
Linguini.
Yes.
My grandmother-in-law, Sean's grandma, has like a kind of a Italian New York accent, so it's interesting.
I love it.
But anyway, Jules, it was so amazing to have you. Thank you for coming on here and just kind of letting us pick your brain and talk about introversion and then journaling and wherever else the conversation took us. So guys, if you like this episode, I have been friends with Jules for a while now, maybe a little over 2 years at least. She's amazing, as you guys probably noticed in the episode. Sean, stop walking around. I'm trying to end this. Oh, do you hear him?
Yes.
Andiamo. So he wanted us to hear him. So I've been friends with Jules for like 2 years, and she's awesome. As you guys can tell, we talk quite a bit, and I love every one of her conversations. So check her out, hit her up, and if you love this podcast, be sure to rate it, review it, share it with a friend, and stay introverted. I nailed it! I got that one. What the hell?
Look at that. She stuck the landing. Awesome.
Finally.
And on that note, we're gonna get out of here. We're gonna wrap it up. So I'm Jay. That's Steph. I'm Papa Julie. We thank you. Till the next time. Stay introverted, y'all.
Yeah. Bye.